Morning, everyone. I've made several videos about, I make a number of videos about where I read articles I find in independent Russian newspapers. And I have read several about, at least one or two, about PMC Wagner, particularly in the Battle of Bakhmut. And yesterday, or I guess it was on the 10th actually, the data department of Mediazona put out a rather interesting article. It's on their English side, so I didn't translate this. This was already in English. It says, the price of Bakhmut. We reveal the staggering toll of Russia's bloodiest battle since World War II and Wagner's inmates recruited to fight it. Says, Yevgeny Prigozhin and his political strategists have spared no effort or expense to create an image of Wagner PMC as an effective and ruthless organization that accomplishes its objectives at any cost. Behind this facade lie thousands killed in so-called meat assaults and their grief-stricken relatives. Their slogan aptly describes their attitude: our business is death and business is good. Which I believe in Russian is Наш бизнес смерть и бизнес хороший. Mediazona, in collaboration with the BBC Russian service, obtained documents about Wagner PMC's posthumous payments. The battle for Bakhmut, also known as the Bakhmut meat grinder, stands out as Russia's bloodiest battle since World War II. Mediazona's analysis of Wagner's documents provides a detailed account of how the battle unfolded, the extent of the losses suffered by the mercenaries, their methods and locations for recruiting prisoners, and the financial expenditures made to compensate the families of those involved. Key findings. Mediazona and BBC Russia service have obtained access to part of Wagner PMC's documents that describe payments to relatives of deceased fighters. They contain over 20,000 records of those killed between January of 2022 and August 2023. During this period, the PMC spent around 108 billion rubles, or $1.2 billion, on such payments, excluding most salaries and injury compensation. We are confident that these documents are genuine. We cross-reference them with our list of the deceased, the probate registry containing inheritance cases, messages by Wagner fighters' relatives online, and leaked police databases. Most fighters died in the Bakhmut meat grinder, over 19,500 men. 17,000 of them were prisoners pardoned by Vladimir Putin. On the bloodiest days, the PMC lost over 200 men per day, with a maximum of 213. Thanks to the numbering system for dog tags, we were able to establish how many prisoners in total went to war for Prigozhin, at least 48,000. For 43,800, we have identified their prisons. Prigozhin wasn't joking when he invited murderers and robbers to join Wagner. 2/3 of the penal colonies where we confirmed recruitment were maximum security. Prisoners were also taken from special regime or super maximum security colonies, and towards the end, even from the colony settlements and medical prison facilities. We built a map of recruitment and its approximate timeline. Wagner employees traveled almost all of Russia, from the European part to the remotest places like Kharp, the Arctic village where Alexei Navalny was murdered, Norilsk, a city in the Siberian Arctic, and Magadan region in the Far East. The documents that came into our possession recorded the disbursement of money to relatives of deceased Wagner fighters. This data covers both prisoners and regular mercenaries. Our source gained access to the files in August of 2023, after Yevgeny Prigozhin's death. For each deceased, we know their dog tag number, full name, call sign, date of death, and two amounts. The first, usually smaller, likely pertained to a salary arrears at the time of death. while the second was the 5 million rubli, or $55,000, payment stipulated in the contract with Wagner PMC for death in combat. We don't have any other salary data or data on payment for injuries. It has a section that you can expand that says why we know that these documents are real. I'm not going to get into that right now. I'll just continue with the actual article. 42174, a conveyor of death. Quote, a white minivan drove onto the prison grounds from which 8 people in civilian clothes emerged. 4 with bags and backpacks remained standing at a distance, while the other 4 walked up to the prisoners lined up outside. 3 burly men had guns, on prison grounds no less, tucked into soft waste bags. The 4th was elderly, bald, short, and had a Hero of Russia star on his chest. Unquote. This is how, in August 2022, an inmate in IK2 in Rybinsk, Yaroslavl region described the meeting with Wagner PMC boss Yevgeny Prigozhin. By that point, Wagner recruiters had already visited about 24 colonies and taken hundreds of people to war from all over Central Russia. The deal with Prigozhin was simple. 6 months at the front in exchange for a pardon and complete erasure of criminal records, along with monetary allowances and insurance payouts to the family in case of death or severe injury. Over 70 inmates from Rybinsk, IK2, joined Wagner, 23 of whom died within a couple of months. Compared to the losses in other colonies, this group could be considered fortunate. We don't know who exactly came up with the idea for Project 42174, Wagner PMC's nickname for prisoner recruitment. It was probably Prigozhin himself, who in the 1980s was sentenced to 13 years in prison for theft and robbery. While recruiting prisoners, he repeatedly referred to his time in prison. In any case, the involvement of prisoners in the war could not have happened without Vladimir Putin's approval. Only the president can issue pardons. The process of supplying prisoners to the war was straightforward and efficient. Recruiters, either under Prigozhin's leadership or independently, would visit a colony and propose the deal. Those who accepted were then invited and vetted by Wagner PMC representatives who claimed to evaluate their physical fitness and well-being. It remains unclear if any applicants were rejected during this screening. Even individuals with HIV, AIDS, and hepatitis were enlisted for war, albeit they were allocated to a distinct unit called the Umbrella Detachment, named after the corporation and Resident Evil franchise known for producing biological weapons. The prisoners left the colony after receiving identical handwritten certificates stating that they were released by decree of the President of the Russian Federation, quote-unquote, on pardoning, as of a specific date or without one. These decrees are classified and not published anywhere. And it has a picture of one, though it's redacted. Let's see here. Of course, it's all in Russian and it's all handwritten, but here you can see what it looks like. The certificate is of no criminal record due to pardoning was published online by one of the prisoner's relatives. Okay. After 2 weeks of training, they were sent to the Lugansk region of Ukraine and assigned to assault detachments, meaning guys from the same prison ended up in different detachments, and even in different platoons within those detachments, which is why many don't know where the others were, unquote. A mother of one of the survivors writes in a chat room for mercenaries' relatives. Relatives often have little information about the fate of their loved ones who were killed in action. Their understanding of the prisoner's involvement in the war typically begins with a call informing them that their relative was leaving with Wagner PMC, although even this didn't always happen. If they're fortunate, they may receive another call from the boot camp before the prisoner is deployed, quote-unquote, beyond the ribbon, followed by a terse message from company representatives announcing their death. One common topic of discussion in relatives chat rooms is the search for fellow fighters who served in assault detachments or were recruited from the same colony. This search is driven by the desire to learn more about how their loved ones died. Sometimes relatives are convinced that a mistake has been made and that the wrong body was sent back in the zinc coffin. Recruitment from Kaliningrad to Magadan. During recruitment, each Wagner PMC mercenary was assigned a call sign and a dog tag with a personal number. Before the 2022 war, all mercenaries received a personal number in the format M and then a number. Even Prigozhin himself, whose number was M-3308, and Wagner PMC field commander Dmitry Utkin M-0209 had M-series dog tags. Prisoners in Wagner PMC were assigned a separate K-series of dog tags. Because of this, they became known as Kashniki in obituaries and relatives chat rooms. After being pardoned by Putin and signing a contract, the prisoners were issued a dog tag in the form of K 3 numbers - 3 numbers, where the first number is the penal colony and the second is the person's own number. Both numberings were sequential. For example, the K1 dog tag corresponded to the very first colony visited by Wagner recruiters, while K617 was the last. We found that those recruited from the same colony received dog tags with the same index, even if the recruiters returned there again. We know of only 10 cases where prisoners from the same colony were assigned a different index during repeat recruitment. Otherwise, this rule was followed. For example, all of those recruited from Polar Wolf Supernax colony in Kharp village had K359 dog tags. Wagner recruiters reached it in mid-December 2022. Thanks to the sequential numbering of dog tags, we can reconstruct the order and geography of recruitment, as well as calculate the number of prisoners who went to war. It should be no less than the number of the last deceased from the colony. It also has information you can expand about why we are certain about the colony index. Wagner's documents contain 501 unique Kashnik indices, from K1 to K617. 116 numbers are skipped. There may be several explanations for this, but we don't know the exact reason. Why we have documents specifically about the deceased, not the recruited, meaning the skipped ones could correspond to colonies where they managed to recruit just a couple of men, and all of them survived. In addition, the recruiters' plans may have changed, and they didn't visit some of the colonies they intended to. In any case, we were unable to confirm the existence of dog tags of the deceased with indices not on our table. So we consider the list complete and the hypothesis of sequential numbering to be correct. Thanks to leaked databases, messages in relatives chat rooms, texts of sentences, and prisoners' lawsuits against colonies, we were able to match 341 dog tags and colonies. We were unable to establish another 161 colonies. However, the recruitment process there did not go as smoothly, and they account for only 4,500 of those who went to war. We know the type of regime, exact region, and the exact colony for the remaining 43,800. The first recruitment took place on July 1st, 2022 at Yablonivka, EK7 in Leningrad region. The K1-001 dog tag was issued to a prisoner with the call sign GDR. His name is not specified in the documents. The death of GDR became part of the legend of the Kashniki in Wagner PMC. Prigozhin repeatedly told the story to other prisoners. GDR was 52 years old, had spent 30 of them behind bars, was surrounded on the battlefield, and blew himself up with a grenade. As far as I know, he took about 4 people with him, Prigozhin would add. Prigozhin called him the first to die at the front, but the documents indicate otherwise. On July 15th, the first to die was a prisoner from Yablonivka with the call sign Polasati, which means striped, followed by Kronos and the next day Bobil, homeless, Bosco and Vegas from Dzerzhinsk, EK9. The overall order of recruitment is clearly visible on the map below. The Wagner fighters moved from west to east and tried to cover almost all the colonies within the region they came to. It's unlikely that Prigozhin personally visited all the colonies, judging by the speed with which they traversed all of Russia. There must have been several recruitment groups. After initial successes in St. Petersburg, Wagner recruiters visited Nizhny Novgorod region, Karelia, Novgorod, and Pskov regions. Around August, they flew to Komi and then returned to central Russia, Tula, Ryazan, Tver, Kaluga, and Vladimir regions. In September, the recruiters went to the southwest, Rostov, Voronezh, Belgorod, and then picked up the remaining regions of the Central Federal District. Wagner groups reached beyond the Urals by October, and by December they were already in the Far East. Speaking in the colonies, Prigozhin specifically invited murderers and robbers to join the PMC, and dedicated ones, not petty criminals, his words, and promised they would enjoy it in Wagner. Judging by the recruitment data, the Wagner fighters were indeed looking primarily for those who had committed grave or especially grave crimes. Most, 227 of the colonies they visited, are maximum security. Prigozhin's representatives also visited at least 74 medium security prisons and 28 supermax prisons. In 2023, they also went to colony settlements and medical prison facilities, 7 settlements and 4 medical facilities. The remaining 161 colonies, which account for a minority of recruits, about 4,500, are most likely lower security regimes, medium security, colony settlements, medical prison facilities. We were unable to establish separate dog tag indices for the groups recruited from pretrial detention centers, although some relatives did mention recruitment in detention centers in chat rooms. Here's a map of where they were recruited from. All the way from Kaliningrad, all the way to the Far East, Kamchatka Peninsula, everything. And you can zoom in, see just how many. There's Moskovsky Oblast and Moskva City. Didn't really get any from within the capital region, but all from around. But anyway, from June 30th, 2022 to February 6, 2023, 48,366 men were recruited, of whom 17,251 were killed in action. In early February, Prigozhin's press service announced that Project 42174 had been terminated. We don't refuse prisoners as such, but a decision was made, I won't go into the details, according to which the prisoners will most likely go to military units. I don't know, it's already beyond my competence, Prigozhin himself explained in an interview with mill blogger Semyon Pegov. Judging by the documents, Prigozhin wasn't being disingenuous in this interview. The last known case of recruitment to us is in February 7th, 2023, K616, Medical Correctional Facility number 42 in Leninsk, Kuznetsky, Kemerovo. After that, prisoners were taken to Storm Z units by representatives of the Ministry of Defense. The Bakhmut meat grinder. We don't know what the goal of Vladimir Putin had set for Yevgeny Prigozhin when allowing recruitment in the colonies, but we do know how Prigozhin treated tens of thousands of prisoners. Almost all of the Wagner fighters recruited from prisons participated in the meat assaults near Bakhmut, and this is where they died. Prigozhin claimed that the Battle of Bakhmut began on October 8, 2022. Wagner PMC even has a medal called the Bakhmut Meat Grinder. The reverse of the award is engraved on October 8, 2022. The command of PMC Wagner and General S.V. Surovikin made the decision to start Operation Bakhmut Meat Grinder with the aim of saving the Russian army and Russia's honor. But the fighting in Bakhmut direction with Wagner involvement began much earlier. To determine the start date of the operation, we asked researchers from the conflict intelligence team. In their opinion, the operation to capture Bakhmut began after the mercenaries managed to seize and while my Russian is not great, it's much better than my Ukrainian, Vuhlihiska power station in late July, a large industrial zone about 20 kilometers southeast of Bakhmut. According to Wagner's documents, the first recruited prisoner died on July 15, 2022. Based on this, we decided to consider this date the beginning of the Battle of Bakhmut. The end date of the Battle of Bakhmut is also disputed. Prigozhin claimed that Wagner took control of the city on May 20, 2023, while Ukraine acknowledged its capture 10 days later. We decided to take the day when Wagner lost only one person, which was June 6, 2023. Thus, the Battle of Bakhmut lasted 327 days. During this time, Wagner lost 19,547 personnel killed, 17,175 were prisoners, and 2,372 were free mercenaries. If we count the time boundaries of the Battle of Bakhmut as defined by Prigozhin, from October 8th, 2022 to May 20th, 2023, then the death toll drops to 18,329. From July 14th, 2022 to June 4th, 2023, 325 days, Russian forces captured 676.96 square kilometers in the Battle of Bakhmut. Wagner lost 19,526 men. And it's got a list of key dates. July 15th to 26th, 2022. Capture of the Vuhlihiska power station. Wagner loses 58 men. August 8th, 2022. Mule blogger Boris Rozhin claims that Wagner fighters managed to enter Bakhmut and fighting has taken place on Patrice Lumumba Street, the eastern outskirts of the city. Wagner losses 10 men. October 8th, 2022, the official start of the Bakhmut Meat Grinder. Wagner loses 30 men, 965 dead since the start of the battle. November 29th, 2022, the village of Kurdyumivka, south of Bakhmut, is almost completely captured. Wagner losses 68 men, 3,605 since the start of the battle. December 15th to 17th, 2022, fighting is taking place in the eastern outskirts of Bakhmut, this time actually on Patrice Lumumba Street. Wagner losses 258 men, 5,268 since the start of the battle. January 11th to 14th, 2023. On January 11th, Prigozhin poses in Soledar and announces the city's complete capture. The next day, January 12th, became the bloodiest in Wagner PMC's history, 213 men dead. On January 14th, the Ukrainian Deep State Project, which monitors changes in the front line, acknowledges that the city is occupied. Wagner losses 626 men, 8,323 since the start of the battle. February 18th, 2023, Bakhmut is surrounded on three sides. Wagner losses 159 men, 12,593 since the start of the battle. March 23, 2023, the city outskirts are captured. Wagner losses 203 men, 15,933 since the start of the battle. April 20th, 2023, Ukraine holds only the western part of the city beyond the railroad. Wagner losses 53 men, 17,788 since the start of the battle. May 5th, 2023, Prigozhin records his famous video against a backdrop of a pile of bodies. On this day, 61 fighters died. more than 3 times less than the peak. 18,537 dead since the start of the battle. May 20th, 2023, Prigozhin announces that Wagner has captured Bakhmut, but the fighting continues. Wagner losses, 48 men, 19,264 since the start of the battle. And finally, June 5th to 6th, 2023, the Battle of Bakhmut ends for Wagner's. Losses, 3 men, 19,547 since the start of the battle. Hopefully that slog didn't lose you too much. But Prigozhin summarized the results of the Bakhmut meat grinder in an interview with mill blogger Konstantin Dolgov. He said that the PMC's losses amounted to 20,000 killed. During the operation, I recruited 50,000 prisoners, of whom approximately 20% died. Exactly as many of them died as those who came under contract, Prigozhin claimed. Thus, Prigozhin acknowledged the death of only 10,000 prisoners and lied about their share in the PMC's losses. As for the chances of survival, here Prigozhin seriously exaggerated the prisoners' chances of returning from the front. In fact, 35.5% died according to Wagner's own list, or 34.4% if we take the 50,000 figure from Prigozhin. In other words, 1 in 3 prisoners died. When signing a contract, Wagner mercenaries were assigned not only a personal dog tag number, but also a call sign, with few exceptions unique. The documents show that in the first weeks of Project 47174, prisoners were assigned call signs that were easy to pronounce and remember: Ampere, Khmer, Sadist, Jockey, Billy, and so on. And later, the principle of assigning call signs changed. Here are a few call signs of prisoners who died on the same day: Pembroke, Rehydron, Servilius, Chist, Nerviana, Sirmione, Comedur, and Treviol. However, quite memorable ones like Shulga and even Navalny are also found nearby. This indifference to call signs probably has a simple explanation. No one even assumed that these mercenaries would be given radios where their call signs are actually used. These are call signs for people whose term of service is 1 or 2 assaults, no more. Sometimes this led to relatives being unable to find information about the deceased. The prisoner would tell his relatives a different, more pleasing call sign. For example, Ryabuk, which means sand grouse, became Voron, meaning raven. Ukrainian losses. In the interview with Dolgov, Prigozhin explained that the point of the Bakhmut meat grinder was to kill as many Ukrainian soldiers as possible. The ratio is as follows. We destroyed 50,000 AFU fighters. Approximately, it's difficult to calculate this precisely. 50 to 70,000 have injuries on the AFU side. I have 3 times fewer kills, maybe even 3.2, and approximately half as many wounded, he claimed. The anonymous UA losses project tallies Ukrainian losses based on open source data. We have already used their data to compare losses of AFU and the Russian armed forces. At the time, we verified this database and deemed it genuine. The UA losses project works on the same principle as Mediazona and BBC's tally of losses, searching for publicly available obituaries. It's not correct to compare the full database of losses and obituaries, but there are other sources of information on the AFU losses in the public domain. The project singles out those killed in Bakhmut into a separate category. Now it has over 8,900 names. But for Ukraine, unlike Wagner, this battle is still not over. Here is UAE losses data. Killed in the Battle of Bakhmut from July 15th, 2022 to June 6, 2023, 4,871 people. Killed in the Battle of Bakhmut, whose date of death is unknown, 630 people. Total killed on all fronts for the period we need, 16,267. The last figure is given for comparison. Obviously, Ukrainian soldiers died not only near Bakhmut. It's unlikely that UA losses sees only 10% of obituaries, which means there are no 50,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed near Bakhmut. It should be taken into account that not only Wagner participated in the Battle of Bakhmut, but also army units, and they also suffered losses. Free mercenaries. When recruiting inmates, Yevgeny Prigozhin claimed that they weren't merely cannon fodder and would serve as equals with regular mercenaries. Their relatives also believed in this. In telegram chats, they often stressed that the recruits signed contracts after receiving a pardon. So this meant that inside the PMC, everyone should be equal. According to the casualties data, that wasn't even remotely the case. Despite Prigozhin's claims, the share of those who came on contract, as opposed to those who recruited from prison, isn't 1/2 of the casualties, but rather 12%. And we know very little about the free mercenaries. Telegram channels associated with Wagner claimed that the PMC wasn't actively involved in the fighting in the first months of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The first 700 fighters came from Africa on March 19th, claimed the Special Ops channel. And on March 20, the first death record appears in Wagner documents. The mercenaries' call sign was Znoi, meaning heat. A day later, 11 Wagner fighters were killed. In the spring of 2022, the PMC fought in the Lugansk region, including the operations in Sieverodonetsk and Popasna. Before the Battle of Bakhmut, Wagner lost nearly 300 men. Compared with the Bakhmut meat grinder, the numbers seem small, but it should be noted that at that point, Wagner wasn't a huge operation. In the 2021 leaks, no more than 9,000 names are mentioned. Most of the fighters remained in the Central African Republic, Sudan, and Libya. But even this force wasn't sufficient for serious operations, and an advertising campaign couldn't provide enough recruits fast enough. The Wagner lists mention mercenaries with old pre-war dog tags, M and B series, as well as previously unknown B, A, P, S, and T, and U tags. The only plausible explanation could be found for the P series, Wagner's pilots. There are 12 of them mentioned in the documents. At least 73 inmates who served 6 months later decided to stay with the PMC, got dog tags of the B series, and were later killed. The total for KIA fighters with M and B series is 228. 108 billion in death money. It's obvious that Wagner didn't only spend money on compensations for KIA fighters, but even these figures are enormous. According to contracts, a fighter's relatives received 5 million rubli, which is $55,000, plus 300,000 rubli, which is $3,300 for a funeral. The second sum could be replaced for a burial organized by Wagner itself. In that case, the records had labels funeral on the cost of the company. The posthumous lists also had information about the last salary payments. For some fighters, they could amount to 1.5 million rubli, which is $16,000. Payments of relatives of recruited inmates added up to 92.5 billion rubli, which is over $1 billion. The payments of regular mercenaries were 15.4 billion rubli, which is $150 million. So, payments for regular mercenary deaths are a little over 10% of what they were for prisoners. So, obviously, it'd be roughly 1 in 10. One regular mercenary died for every 10 recruited prisoner. In total, during the war in Ukraine, the PMC spent 108 billion rubli, which is $1.2 billion, on posthumous payments. Did the war change people? 31,000 of the 48,000 recruited inmates survived the Bakhmut meat grinder. A chat for Wagner fighters' relatives has a topic which is named, Did the War Change People? Here are the first messages there. And there will be profanity here. I preserve it just for, to maintain the appropriate effect. First one says, I can't fucking say. He's hammered all the time, delirious, running around in the backyard, digging a trench, 3 crying emojis. Total shit show. I can't find peace since April the 5th. Second one, nothing changes. We'd be better off with him still in prison, because now they survived, they came back, and they decided they're immortal and can do whatever they want. Third post. Hi everyone, my guy returned on April the 3rd. It was great for the first 4 days. I was really at peace after he came back, and he seemed emotionally stable. On the 5th day, he got drunk with a friend, came home at 3 a.m., crashed my car with a sledgehammer and beat me up real bad. You ask if war changes people? Yes, and not in a good way. Fourth message. My guy is back for a month now. Can't get back to normal. Was sitting at home. Everything was bad. He was done right with everything. Started drinking. Went off the rails. And yesterday lay hands on me. Broke my nose. We have 2 children. I don't know what to do. Nearly giving up. Of course, there are positive examples too. Relatives write that the war made a person more mature. They are happy that he has a clean life after the pardon was granted. But those who didn't use this chance could often be found in the news reports. Media write about former Wagner recruits committing various crimes nearly every day. By the end of 2023, according to Verstka, there were about 200 criminal cases opened against them. The inmate recruitment conveyor is still working after the death of its creator. The difference is convicts are now joining Russia's Ministry of Defense Storm Z units. After the failed mutiny attempt, Russian authorities try to bury Wagner PMC into oblivion. But the methods of Yevgeny Prigozhin are highly sought. Meat assault tactics are now used in regular infantry units just as much as with inmates. The data comes from Mediazona's data team, Dmitry Treshkanin, and BBC Russian Service. Visualization comes from Mediazona's data team, and the text from Dmitry Treshkanin and Mediazona's data team, with Yegor Skoboroda and Mika Golubovsky. So there you have it. Hopefully I didn't lose you with some of the numbers, but just even the one number, $108 billion for death payments for fighters. It's unreal, If I'm not mistaken, nearly as many people died in the Battle of Bakhmut for PMC Wagner as died in the entire Soviet army during the Afghan war. It's just staggering. Approximately over three times as many as U.S. casualties in Operation Iraqi Freedom. So, but there you go. Have a good day.